Well, that was a lot. Hello, interwebs. I hope you are all doing well, and I am here to review the 5th episode of HBO Max's The Last of Us. And being honest, I don't know what the title of it is because I'm kind of emotionally overwhelmed at the moment and didn't have the energy to go and look up the title, but I also wanted to record this review for all of you. Quick peek into my personal life. Some of you may already know this, considering you may have followed me on Twitter or are also a Star Trek fan and watch Trek culture stuff, but in case you don't follow me in all those places, which you shouldn't, I'm a weird dork. I do strange stuff elsewhere. You just come here for these Last of Us reviews. But I got to travel to Los Angeles this past few days to go attend the Star Trek Picard premiere, and I'll talk about that in a different video. It was amazingly exciting, but it was also an emotionally very rejuvenating and sweet past couple days. I really kind of needed it. And then I just flew in today, and now I got home and I was planning on reviewing this tomorrow, but I decided, you know what, I'll watch The Last of Us tonight because I have some time, and then I'll just review it afterwards. And I realized that was a bad mistake because I know how much this show has emotionally devastated me already, and this one was no different. Even knowing, just for all of you, I've played the video game, as I've said before, and I knew vaguely what was probably going to be coming with the story of Henry and Sam, and full spoilers, by the way, at this point as we get into the review. I was hoping that they would go a different route, knowing deep in my heart of hearts that they probably would not, and I was like trying to gird my heart for the end of this episode, and I am shocked, considering that I was so prepared for this story beat, by how much it emotionally affected me. This is the one thing that's really interesting to me watching this show as someone who's played the game, is me wondering, like, how are they going to make me surprised? And in a weird way, considering what they did in such a beautiful way with Bill and Frank, my heart kind of had this opening towards Henry and Sam, being like, maybe they'll get a different end than they got in the video game. And because of that, it just sort of wrenched me apart when we got those final scenes, because I knew what was coming. I knew what had to come based on the setup that we now had and the emotional beats that they were going through. And it just tore me apart because of my expectation that I had with the changes in Bill and Frank. And so I think that there's just this really masterful understanding of what an audience who has not played the games will respond to, but also sort of awareness of what will also gut punch the people who have played the games, being like, oh, Bill and Frank got a reprieve in a weird way that we didn't expect. Maybe Henry and Sam will, and they don't. And it really hit me in the gut. So I had to start there because that's kind of where emotionally I'm at the moment. And sorry, I'm burping. I had tea as well. Again, I'm very much I just got off a flight after emotional experience and now having another emotional experience for this review. Getting into the rest of the episode, though, I did like, considering where we are going to end up with Henry and Sam, I like starting off with them where we get to like really see Henry and Sam's relationship. And I like to see that they sort of had this bond immediately. And it's just Henry constantly caring for Sam throughout the episode and worrying about his brother's emotional needs over his own, and you see that guides him as a character. You sort of see him in the opening beats being like trying to make sure his brother doesn't feel afraid. When he's sort of when his brother asks what Joel and Ellie said later on in the episode, Henry says, "Oh, they said they're going to protect us," because he's trying to exude that confidence in front of him as Joel and Ellie watch. It's just that constant projection of protection. So that when we finally get to the underground sequences, where we get to see a little bit of a couple of the scenes from the video game. And I'm sad we didn't get by the way, there's like a side story in the video games when the characters do go into the tunnels. That's like you figure out through just like things that you pick up in the game. And it's also a really emotional story, even though it's just told through like collectibles and text. So I was surprised we didn't get to see a little element of that in the like going in the tunnel and finding like the daycare center stuff. But you know, they can't fit everything in. But it was that's just an emotional story that always resonated with me, was those collectibles. So I was excited to possibly see that. But anyways, getting to see Joel and Henry have that connection, and it tying into why Henry is being hunted by Kathleen, in that he sacrificed this leader of this rebellion against these fascist Fedra assholes so that he could save his brother. And that leader happened to be also Kathleen's brother, which is now why we see why Kathleen is not only so gung-ho on attacking Henry and going after him, but is also why she became a leader. I saw some critiques last week from different reviewers and saying they didn't like the performance of Kathleen because she seemed a little bit too unsure of herself as a leader, and you would expect a leader to kind of have that like confidence. But now that we know how she got in this position, I completely understand it, because she became a leader by association. Her brother was the leader figure. And so when he died, she kind of probably got thrust into that role when that's really not what she wanted to be or was built for as a person in terms of her temperament. And so you go back to watch the last episode and you see Kathleen sort of being a little bit more unsure of a leader, and you're wondering, like, why do all these people with all these guns follow her? Well, it's because she never really wanted this role to begin with, but now she's driven by anger and trauma at her brother's death that she just wants to get back at Henry. And so she's taken on that role. And it goes to like this theme of the show, and no spoilers for the game, but I will talk spoilers for the game at the end of this video, so just know that that's going to be coming. This idea of trauma begetting more trauma. That, Henry was trying to save his brother, which led him to lead to the killing of the resistance leader, and then that leading Kathleen to want to lash out at him, and then on it goes to where we get to the end of the episode, just trauma begetting trauma begetting trauma begetting trauma. Just this cause-effect cycles that ends up with everyone dead, quite literally at the end in terms of Henry and Sam's story with Kathleen. A few other things with that, though. I loved how Henry viewed himself as the bad guy. He knew what he had done in the grand scheme of things was wrong, but you also understand him on an individual level because he loved his brother, that he would sacrifice the leader of this resistance group, who they kind of equate to Jesus a few times, like, oh, he was always asking forgiveness, which, it's not saying like he was like the savior of all mankind's sins, but that sort of idea of like a leader who argues for forgiveness is something I resonate with. So he definitely had that sort of like very kind role that Kathleen doesn't embody. But anyways, Henry was willing to give him up to save his brother, and you understand that, but you see that he wrestles with that ethically in the grand scheme of things, which I thought was a great sort of like seeing him like reflect on like, oh, I'm the bad guy in this scenario, and Joel sort of wondering upon that. But with Kathleen as well, just sort of her, like I said, her brother being this figure who would, like, for lack of a better word, preach forgiveness. She's not that person. And again, it just goes to show how even the ideals that you start off a movement with, kindness, caring, facing off against fashion, can be co-opted through trauma and pain that others experience. And it's, again, those cycles of trauma through love that I think that the show reflects really well. Some other few things, I could talk about some of the nitty-gritty. The action sequences in this were really, really great. I love Joel sneaking up on the sniper, and Joel sort of giving the sniper a moment to be like, hey, put it down, please, we don't have to do this, and the sniper not giving him that chance. And you agree with Joel, but it's still a shitty thing. He has to kill this old man, even though he's giving him every chance to stop. So I like seeing that bit of like ethical decision making from Joel, like trying to give him a warning and still not getting the chance. But then the sequence when all of the the clickers and then the bloater come out of the ground. Hot fucking damn, Jesus Christ. When I saw them come, I know they were probably CGI creations mixed with some practical effects, but like with all of them coming out and just kept going for just a few seconds longer than you would have thought that they would cut away from. It's like, oh, you're like, oh, everyone's done for. That's a lot. That's a lot of clickers. And the boomer coming out was, oh, that was wonderful. I will say, you could tell that it was a CGI creation. It moved a little bit too fast compared to, I guess just the movement felt a little bit too smooth compared to like the jerky movements of the actual people. So you could tell the bloater was a CGI creation, but they smartly did it at night. And so it sold it just enough for me that I thought it looked terrifying and like just it could knock people out of the way. And I was like, oh, that feels right out of the video game. So I think there's a little bit of distance from me from it being like, oh, I can tell that's CGI versus the very practical clickers that we got in episode 2, I believe. But it still looked great and felt hefty and felt like terrifying. Just seeing it amongst the crowd was really, really cool. And kind of how casually the camera treated it after its first introduction. That was sort of like in wide shots and things like this. I thought that in background, like out of sight, like it felt weighty and strong, even though it was a CGI creation. So good on them. But I liked the bit where Joel is sort of protecting Ellie, and I like that they have this dynamic. It felt like that sequence felt so right out of the video game, where like Ellie is going through and trying to protect things and Joel's trying to shoot and protect her. Straight out of a video game like action sequence where you're protecting someone else in the sniper tower. I don't even know if that was really part of the game. I think it was. It's been a while since I played part 1, so I might be misremembering if there's that level. But yeah, it felt right out of that game, and it just also showed that Joel is willing to protect Ellie now. Like he's really like they're vibing. They're they're actually like working together even without thinking or speaking. Like Ellie trusts Joel to help protect her, and he's sort of following her. It just sort of created that bond without even either of them, I think, understanding or realizing it. So that when we get to the end of the episode, when again, spoilers, Sam, I think is the kid, turns into the clicker, or not the clicker, the infected, that Joel like wants to protect Ellie. That's his first impulse. It was really great. But then this leads us to a couple things just to wrap out Sam and Henry's story. I like the moment with Kathleen where she sort of said, "This is what it is. You know, I'm not going to protect the kids. Fuck them." Essentially. And it's, again, this idea of trauma beginning trauma, that starts with out of a place of Henry's love for his brother, and it leads everyone just dead anyways. It goes into our final scene, like, Henry and Sam die. Everyone died for... You don't want to say nothing, because Sam got to have more of a life, but at the end of all of this, it's just a cycle of everyone's dead. When... If other choices had been made, maybe more people would be alive. If someone had forgiven someone, if these cycles of violence hadn't kept continuing, if they'd forgiven someone, then it would have stopped it. But ultimately, everyone just ends up dead because no one broke that cycle. And so when Henry and Sam, those final few moments, is great. And I love the final scenes between Ellie and Sam, where like Ellie just has this innocent hope that she could save his life by putting blood on him. It's like, oh, you understand Ellie just being a kid and having that innocent hope that it'll be fine, that she can save the world because she hasn't had the experience to know that, you know, hope doesn't always work. Hope is not always enough in certain situations. Sometimes you can't save everyone. But she has that childlike innocent hope because she hasn't had the experience to know otherwise that doesn't always turn out that way. You don't always endure and survive. And yeah, and so you just felt that when you realized, like, yeah, the kid's dead and she can't save him, even though she wants to. So yeah, that was a really powerful moment there. And in the final moment where she throws down the "I'm sorry" on the grave, you see Joel realizing that she's experienced trauma, she's experienced pain, and he can't protect her from that, and he wants to. You see it. He's like, I want to protect her from this. I want to protect her from more pain. And you just see that switch, why he feels that empathy. Pedro Pascal plays it wonderfully. So that was all excellent. And yeah, I'm going to have to talk a little bit of spoilers to the game now. So if you have not played the game, jump off here. But just know I really like this episode very clearly. And also, there's a reason Aronach's not in this review, because I just came from Los Angeles. So we'll have Aronach hopefully back next week if she's available. But anyways, getting into spoilers for the game. If you haven't played it, jump off here. I like this story of Kathleen and Henry and Sam, very much reflecting the story of the end of part 1 of Last of Us going into part 2 with Abby's storyline, about how Joel will kind of make a similar choice to Henry, that reflection between the two of them, because Joel will also sacrifice Joel's autonomy, which is worse than what Henry did, because Henry was trying to save his brother's life through medicine, but Joel will do worse than sacrifice Ellie's autonomy, but also Ellie's ability to cure the human race, because he's going to protect her. And what he thinks is protecting her. And so he makes a similar choice as Henry, and it leads to the cycles of violence that we see in Last of Us Part 2. And that whole cycle of that game is a similar cycle sparked by Joel's choices. And that's what happened with Henry, and it just leaves everyone dead. And the only difference between Part 1 and Part 2 is Ellie's choice at the end of Part 2 to stop continuing the cycle of violence, which Kathleen couldn't do. So in a way, Kathleen is in a similar situation to where Ellie will be at the end of Last of Us Part 2, which will now be Season 3, I guess, of The Last of Us, of the TV show, because Seasons 2 and 3, they said, are going to be Part 2. Or at least that it won't all fit into Season 2, I guess, is the distinction. So yeah, this is a great episode. Sorry I'm a bit more, kind of down to earth and emotional about it. It's been a long, emotional up and down roller coaster, and this one brought me down in a very good way. I'm tired. Love you all. Take care of yourselves. We'll have Aronach back next week, and I hope you all live long and prosper.